For us to prepare to hear a little bit about the Gauteng province and what the Gauteng province is doing to develop the local content framework, as it were. And I'd like to, at this point, welcome the MEC for Economic Development in the province, MEC Parks Tau. As you are aware, MEC Tau did serve as the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs until he was appointed to the Gauteng provincial legislature in December 2020. And he has also been the Mayor of the city of Johannesburg in the province from 2011 to 2016. But sir, can you kindly come up on stage and can we kindly welcome him warmly?
Thank you very much to our program director, Ms. Fifi Peters, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, both on the virtual platform and those here physically. So you're actually getting two for the price of one. My colleague Zweli will do the actual detailing of the localization framework, the local content framework that we've developed as the province of Gauteng. So I thought that rather than us doing the tech team by saying the same things, I will lay the foundation and he will elaborate on the content of the local content framework that's been developed by the provincial government of Gauteng. And in laying this framework, I thought it would be important to create context to what we're doing as the province of Gauteng as we intervene to accelerate our industrialization and reindustrialization initiatives as the Gauteng provincial government and its partners. The Premier would have announced the presentation will be later. So when Zweli comes, he'll do the clicking and the presentation and the more complicated parts. So I was saying that the Gauteng provincial government, as announced by the Premier in the State of the Province address, has established an economic development war room to respond to the significant, if not in fact, crisis-level challenges that we have in our economy, ranging from the lackluster economic growth prior to COVID-19 and the impact that COVID-19 had in exacerbating our challenges as a province, indeed as a country, but admittedly as part of the world economy. This war room is intended to drive programs of accelerated economic growth and development and drive an acceleration process of our industrialization and reindustrialization initiatives. These are anchored on a number of interventions, and I'll talk to a few so that I lay a firm platform for Zweli to come into the detail. The first, picking up from the previous panel discussion, is about a new economic geography in the province of Gauteng defined by our multi-tier special economic zone initiative. And when we talk multi-tier special economic zones, we're talking about them accepting that, in fact, Gauteng continues to play a critical role in the South African economy and continues to pivot the South African economy. Therefore, our intervention is a multi-sector and multi-tier approach, looking at a number of interrelated special economic zones that would look at the different niches in which they would operate. This starting, of course, with the OR Tambo Industrial Development Zone that was established some time ago, and I think as Tammy reflected, is the center from which we're driving the jewelry manufacturing precinct, but also accelerating into areas such as beneficiation of minerals in our country. The second, which is our current flagship special economic zone, is the Zwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, which is currently under development, with development taking place at what can reasonably be described as breakneck speeds. If you think about this, the time from which we started construction and the anticipation that the new facilities would be available not only to Ford but also to their tier 1 suppliers fully by June this year, but parts of these have already been made available for manufacturing of various components and parts, including the current Ford production capabilities that are there. We're also in the process of finalizing the master plan for the establishment of the Vaal Special Economic Zone, and are initiating a process to develop a master plan for the Western Special Economic Zone, and have identified Lanseria as the anchor of a high-tech special economic zone that would springboard the presidential announcement on the creation of the Lanseria Smart City. Over and above these, we are intervening through the Township Economic Development Act by introducing new economic geographies into historically black townships that were designed to be dormitories of labor reserves. Through the Township Economic Development Act, we would be able to introduce township enterprise zones and dedicated nodes for industrial and commercial development in the townships, supported through benefit stacking, where as government would identify various forms of benefits, including incentives that would concentrate in these township enterprise zones. But of course, we accept that critical to the success of these industrial parks and commercial zones is the need to ensure that we're able to provide the necessary utilities through the appropriate infrastructure to support these zones. So every time we talk about the Vaal Special Economic Zone, what comes to mind immediately would be, but we still have the Vaal wastewater management system challenges. Or when we talk about the Zwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, what would come to mind to many would be the supply side challenges with regards to electricity in Zwane. But overall in the country, if you look at the load shedding environment, but specifically our capacity to extend the necessary bulk infrastructure to the Zwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, in particular, electricity infrastructure. In this regard, we have developed a program anchored by special purpose vehicles that we would create to invest in bulk infrastructure, leveraging of future revenue, both of provincial government and, of course, of our local government partners. Whereas local government has been able to do this over the years, given the provisions of the fiscal framework, Minister Gauteng announced in his budget speech this year that as of this year, he would make provision for provincial governments to leverage off their grants to capitalize infrastructure in our respective provinces. This in many ways is a breakthrough because whilst we are not suppliers of bulk infrastructure, technologies have evolved such that it should be possible to provide modular systems in these special economic zones and township enterprise zones. In this regard, we have identified Zwane Automotive Special Economic Zone as a focus area for our microgrid initiative, because these microgrids are intended to ensure that we can create an industrial base load in terms of energy supply to strategic industrial parks in the country. So we have said that Zwane is one of our prototype areas. We are conscious not to use the word pilot, but we're saying it's one of the prototype areas where we would drive such an initiative. And of course, we're looking at the N12 corridor closely linked to the Vaal, or rather to the Western Special Economic Zone, as the second of those prototype areas where we would have access to energy driven through microgrids to supply the base load energy that would be required in these special economic zones. We're also looking at modular sanitation systems or wastewater treatment systems to be able to support initiatives that could otherwise be delayed as a result of the need to wait for large investments into bulk infrastructure. So we're looking at modular systems that would enable us to create the necessary infrastructure to spur on our economic development initiatives. In this regard, we're also driving, and this is as I get to handing over the baton to my colleague, we're looking at a number of programs around the inclusive economies broadly, but local content creation in particular for the purpose of this discussion this morning. Here we're driving programs such as a compliance initiative that would ensure that firstly, as the provincial government and our departments, we do comply to those products and goods that have been designated and identify additional areas of designation of products for the Gauteng provincial economy in particular and Gauteng-based enterprises. We also, parallel to this, driving a further compliance initiative closely linked to the local content framework, which is looking at broad-based Black economic empowerment and looking at ourselves not just as regulators, but also as a measured entity, and therefore the need to develop more comprehensive enterprise and supplier development initiatives, skills development initiatives, and a whole suite of other interventions that would enable, including procurement, that would enable us to accelerate broad-based Black economic empowerment. We are talking to industry and particular sectors around the role that they can play with regards to accelerating local content. We had a set of roundtables in the past month with industry leads, and I'm only going to choose one as I hand over, about where the opportunities could be with regards to local content creation and promotion. We have had engagements with the automotive sector, NAMSA, and the OEMs in particular, about the challenges that they have confronted in the global value chains as a result of the impact of COVID to supply chains internationally. And we have identified an opportunity to work together to ensure, and we accept, of course, that we're not the only automotive manufacturing area in the country, so we're collaborating very closely with our colleagues in the Eastern Cape and KZN. But we're saying, working with the sector, it is possible that, in fact, we can change the situation around where they are reliant on imports of components for the majority of the components that they use to produce the Nissan Navara, the Ford Ranger, and so on, the BMW X3 and 3 Series that are being produced locally, at least in the context of Gauteng. And we're saying there's a great opportunity to intervene collectively to ensure that we can introduce programs around import substitution and creating a local base for the South African economy to be able to leverage of these products that are manufactured on our shore. So that, as I said, was a platform from which I can hand over to Zweli, who in many ways colleagues in the department call Mr. B-BBEE. So I'm sure as he presents the local content framework, he is likely to make reference to broad-based Black economic empowerment. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues observing all the protocols in the room and also on different platforms that are listening to us. I'm just going to build on the foundation that has already been laid by the MEC, very quick. So we're launching today the Gauteng B-BBEE and Local Content and Production Framework. The reason it is a B-BBEE and Local Content and Production Framework is because it is the implementation of the B-BBEE policy and the Local Content and Production Compliance Regulation of the PPFMA Regulation 2017. So basically, these are the topics that we'll be covering quickly. Under the overview, the Gauteng Department, as you know, we are also faced with a number of challenges based on our situation. And then in developing the framework, we use the policies that are already existing. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but we've got the policies that are already existing nationally and also provincially. And we also look at the strategies that are already existing in the province and also nationally. The strategies like your Growing Gauteng Together, your Industrial Policy Action Plan. So the value proposition is really to grow the economy of the province, to create the jobs that we need in the province, and also to close the inequality gap that is so huge. So what is it that we are envisaging to achieve with this, the implementation of the GPG, BBBEE, and Local Content and Production Framework? The first thing that we are attempting to achieve is to reduce the level of business informality by 15%. So basically, all the businesses that we'll be targeting that are not formal, we are going to formalize them so that they participate in the mainstream. We are going to improve the procurement participation of township enterprises. Since you're also aware that we've developed the township bill, we are really making an effort in terms of ensuring that the township enterprises, they are also playing in the mainstream of our economy. We also want to increase the survival rate of SMMEs. We don't want to develop SMMEs and then within a year or two and then they are no longer existing. We also want to reduce the unemployment rate from 35% to 15%. We also want to ensure that as a provincial government, we source 75% of our goods and services from locally manufactured enterprises. And then the other thing is to increase the firm birth by 500,000 by 2024. Township economy contribution to contribute 30% of the provincial GDP. So what is it that is contained in our implementation plan? As I've indicated earlier, the target. We're targeting the budget that the province have, especially the public institutions. So from April 2021 to January 2022, this is how much we have spent as a province on goods and services. And then the departments that I've highlighted in red are the departments that I've sampled, and then I'm going to indicate what is it that I got from them. So, but the next slide, it will be talking to only the departments that are in red. So, when we look at the spend of those departments that I've highlighted by red, the pharmaceutical, the goods that falls under pharmaceutical, we have spent around about 5 billion. That is from April 2021 up to January 2022. And then for construction, we have spent around about 3 billion. For energy, transport, and automotive, we have spent around about 2 billion. So basically, these kind of like give us an indication as to where are we spending our budget for goods and services as the province. So that automatically indicate to us the township enterprise zones that we need to establish in the province, because already we have a market for those goods and services, and we can able to facilitate support to those targeted enterprises. So basically, we can establish the pharmaceutical enterprise zone, we can establish the construction enterprise zone, we can establish the energy, transport, and automotive, because already we've got a budget that there's a clear demonstration that we are spending on those sectors. So now, when we establish these enterprises, especially from the Township Enterprise Zone, we're not only targeting the Gauteng market. So the intention is to ensure that these enterprises, they will be able to supply the Gauteng market, the South African market, and the African market, and the global market. So as our process of monitoring them, during their first year of existence, we know that they will almost be dependent on our Gauteng market. But over the years, we just want to see them reducing the dependence on the Gauteng market and increasing their dependence on the global market. That's what we will also be monitoring as we develop them. Coming to the support that is available. In terms of providing the support, we're using the B-BBEE policy. Based on the B-BBEE policy, we've got a skills development element that demands that each and every public institution need to allocate 6% of its total budget for salaries. When we do the calculation, especially from April up to February 2022, so that is the budget that we are targeting. So basically, that's a minimum. So which means in the next financial year, we are going to have more than this budget for skills development. So all the enterprises that we'll be targeting, especially in our enterprise zones, this is the budget that we'll be using in terms of providing the skills that is needed. And then coming to enterprise and supply development, we also know that the B-BBEE policy also provides us with this opportunity to get a budget for supply development, enterprise development, and socioeconomic development. When we look at the allocation is just the budget that has been spent on salaries and the budget that has been spent on goods and services. And then the total, it comes to around about 108 billion. So the B-BBEE policy prescribed that 0.2% of that budget we need to provide to make it available for supply development. And then when you do the calculation, this is the budget that we'll be having in terms of supporting the enterprises that will be procuring from them, 217 million. For enterprise development, it's around about 108 million, and then for socioeconomic development, it's also 108 million. Maybe the other thing that is important that I also need to highlight is to say, this only talks to the department's budget spend, not the transfer. We know that some of our departments, they've got subsidiaries or agencies. So it doesn't cover the budget that has been transferred to subsidiaries and the agencies. And then when we conclude, the Gauteng province is really taking advantage of what the policies are providing to us and also the budget and the institutions that are already existing in the province and also in the country. By implementing the GPG, B-BBEE and local content and production framework, we really want to reindustrialize the township economy to make sure that we get maximum benefit out of it. The provincial municipalities and private sector are targeted starting from 2023 up to 2024. So basically, based on what we're targeting in terms of market and also the support, and then you can see how much impact can we make if all of us, especially the provincial departments, our agencies, the municipalities and the private sector, all of us, if we can work together. So the effective and efficient implementation of the framework will also ensure that all public institutions in the province achieve the 75% local procurement target, of which is prescribed in the local procurement accord that was signed by government, labor, business, and all the stakeholders. And also to comply with the B-BBEE policy. We know that most of the government institutions, they are not B-BBEE compliant. So basically in Gauteng, we'll ensure that most of our public institutions, they are also complying with the B-BBEE policy. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you.